Thanks for tuning in, you guys. Today we're discussing some of my all time favorite artists from the 1960s. So here I am on my iPad. I've gone to Angel of Discord on Spotify. That's my band here. And if you go down, you can see, and I'm super honored by this, there's a playlist called Muffin Music to Comfort Your Soul Hole. But right above it is the artist playlist. And we go to those. And this is where I've got my favorite songs from every era. So we can maybe go, let's start with the 60s, huh? And I just want to talk about these picks. Unfortunately, I'm not able to, and it's kind of sad, not able to upload the songs into YouTube because they will sue me. So I'm just going to talk about the songs. But if you want to listen to the songs, you just go right here, Angel of Discord's top 50 songs from the 60s. So let's give this a look, huh? Kicked it off with What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong because I remember my brother, when I was a kid, would sit on the piano and he'd sing that song. And he's the same brother that I never see anymore, which is really sad. So it's almost like he's dead because he's gone. I haven't seen him in 15 plus years. And he is just completely left. But he's the reason I play music. And I remember him singing it in that Louis Armstrong voice and just such a warm song. I don't think anybody has bad memories to that song. I think it's one of the most powerful songs that stands the test of time. Speaking of the test of time, The Times They Are A-Changin' by Bob Dylan is number 2 for me. And it was hard to choose because I only want to do one from each artist, right? Otherwise, I mean, let's be honest, the 60s would be nothing but a couple of artists if we could only choose one. Because a few artists in the 60s, and in every era, are incredibly prolific. I'd say Bob Dylan, the Beatles, maybe Frank Zappa, Jimi Hendrix. Some of those artists would just dominate the list, and it would just be a little bit, it's not fair to the other artists who are also fucking great. Really difficult. 60s was a good era of Bob Dylan. 70s is my favorite. That was even harder. But I decided The Times They Are A-Changin'. Just because I think it had such a good sentiment and it was such a powerful song from the era. I think that to disregard that and to try to pretend that something was even better or more profound would feel kind of, hipsterish or trying to be underground a little too hard. Times They Are A-Changin' was changed the times. Or at least it was on the nose. A change is going to come. What a powerful song. Sam Cooke. What a beautiful vocal. What a beautiful melody. So I put that in number 3. And another song that was just powerful for the generation and for the times that came out in, as well as standing the test of time. Eleanor Rigby, the Beatles in the 60s, were a powerhouse of a band. So hard to choose, but I love when they incorporated some really experimental classical orchestrations into their pop music. To me, that was the Beatles' best, at their best. And I think Eleanor Rigby is a great example of that. Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, that's got to be one of my very favorite vocal takes of all time. It's got to be one of the most relaxing and yet haunting songs that I could think of. Sun Ra is somebody that I didn't get into until I was quite a bit older. But once I did, I found the same love that I did for the next artist on the list as well. You could almost put those as tied. I put Sun Ra ahead just because I'm sure he was an influence on Zappa. But those two, Peaches and Regalia and Tapestry from an Asteroid, those to me go hand in hand as just amazing compositions from the era. Sun Ra and Frank Zappa, though, I think are to this day interesting musically and very unique. And in a time when music is homogenized further and further, for better or worse, they stand out a lot. Etta James, At Last, I mean, that's That's a beautiful tune, right? And I, of course, am in love with Duke Ellington the same way that I am with Frank Zappa and Sun Ra as a composer. I mean, that was good composition. Really amazing orchestration. Respect, Aretha Franklin. It was transformative lyrically, but it was also one of the best vocal takes that I could think of. And Aretha's another artist that it was difficult to narrow down to one, right? Because what a powerhouse. Same with Willie Nelson. Crazy. I chose Crazy because it's Willie Nelson's favorite song he's ever written. It's counter to Etta James, Duke Ellington, Frank Zappa, Sun Ra. Why it's a counter? Willie Nelson says a good song, 3 chords and the truth. Hard to argue. What do you say there? There's no real right answer. Jimi Hendrix, Are You Experienced? Here, maybe I'm being a little hipstery. Maybe it should be Purple Haze. Maybe it should be Foxy Lady. Maybe it should be Castles Made of Sand. I like Are You Experienced because, to me, that was the beginning of electronic music. The way that he was going in and he was using the wah-wah, he was using all these weird effects, he was doing a lot of editing and post, where if you listen to him live, it doesn't sound anything like that. But that's what was cool about Hendrix. That's what was cool about Led Zeppelin. That's what was cool about music at that time. And it's one of the things I think is the best about the 60s. It's one of the strengths that the 60s had, was that you're looking at artists who don't sound the same live as they do in the studio. We've got Everybody's Talking at Me, Harry Nilsson. I mean, is that a one-hit wonder? I don't know. I don't know any other songs by him, but that song is amazing. That song is one of the most peaceful songs. If I really want to just space out and relax, put that one on. You know, just like Crazy by Willie Nelson. It's simple, it's great. And Spoonful by Howlin' Wolf ties right into that. Simple, great, classic blues. Howlin' Wolf, to me, along with early flamenco singing, was some of the first really fry vocals. And I know what you're thinking, Smokestack Lightning. But the thing is, that was in the 50s. Spoonful was in the 60s. No Particular Place to Go, Chuck Berry. I've got more songs by Chuck Berry in the 50s as well. But in the 60s, I thought No Particular Place to Go is a great punchline, simple blues song, rolling us right into Honky Tonk with the Rolling Stones. This might be divulging too much. But when I was first learning my sexuality, we'll just say that, Honky Tonk Woman was one of the first songs that was like, oh, this is a sexy song. Like, you know, you think about a girl that you really like, you know, and you're doing dirty things or whatever, and you think of when you listen to Honky Tonk Woman, it's something about the drums. Leonard Cohen, I actually think his best era, and hear me out, is in the 2000s, 2010s. I think that's when he as a poet, maybe even surpassed Bob Dylan, was in late life. But Burn on the Wire was my favorite from the 60s. In a sentimental mood, I mean, Duke Ellington, Coltrane, we're going right back to that Frank Zappa, Sun Ra. That's just some good composition. Feeling Good, that's a song that's been covered by everybody from Muse to, I think, even U2, live. It's a great song. Nina Simone, I think it's got a really cool progression. I always think of my buddy Pete, and he goes, I'm feeling gay, dun, dun, dun. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of funny. I don't know why. It's a funny song in a way, because it's such a simple composition. It's so dramatic as a composition, that chromatic down. But fucking catchy, man, and it's stood the test of time for sure. It's been covered a million times. It sounds modern today. For What It's Worth, Buffalo Springfield. Now we're getting into stuff that is, you know, significant. It was significant because it led to Neil Young. It led to other artists that came out of Buffalo Springfield. And it was also significant because it was protesting the Vietnam War. And hell, is it not still relevant today? Got Needles and Pins by The Searchers. That's a song I always thought was by the Ramones. Love that song. It's also covered by Tom Petty. If we're talking about songs that are covered a lot, those last a couple ago too. Needles and Pins goes right in there. It's a beautiful composition. One of my favorites. For just a simple pop song, very catchy. Try just a little bit harder. Janis Joplin. How can you not love Janis's voice? Just like Howlin' Wolf. Really pioneering some of those fry vocals, some of those grunge vocals, some of the stuff that would later really revolutionize rock and roll and keep it relevant. Janis Joplin was doing as a woman in the 60s. Amazing. Shake Your Moneymaker, Elmore James. This is just classic rock and roll, you know? It's the name of a 90s album by the Black Crowes even. That's how long that has stayed rock and roll. Elmore James, one of the pioneers. You got Louie Louie by the Kingsmen, because how can you not? How can you deny that? It was one of the first songs that Christian moms were protesting because they thought it was causing kids to go insane and riot. Just because of the ay, 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 ay. Covered by Motorhead, covered by everybody. It's a classic. River Deep by Tina Turner. Honestly, I only really recently got into Ike and Tina Turner. Partly because, you know, there's this negative stereotype that Ike was beating Tina to get her to be her best, which is pretty fucked up. But when you actually listen, they were a powerhouse band. My God, was that good for the 60s. That was like, it was almost Zeppelin-esque. They were really fucking good. End of the Night by The Doors. Yeah, Jim got kind of low on the list. I was surprised. They're one of my favorite bands. I love Jim's vocals. I think they were pioneers of something that maybe hasn't even happened yet. So there's a million things that made me think that they'd be higher on the list, but it was just impossible to do. Too much good stuff coming out in the 60s. Whipping Post, Allman Brothers Band. It's a song that's really cool for its time signature. Coming out of a southern rock band that was very, very popular at the time. This might be one of the most popular songs that's in 7/4. I'll Be Your Mirror. That's I mean, a very sweet song, right? And Nico's strange, unique, over-the-top personality and singing style only amplify it. I don't want you cutting off your hair. B.B. King. Song is edgy. Would it pass today? I don't know. Does B.B. King play the guitar in a soulful way and sing in a soulful way on a very funny song? Yes, I like it. Heart Full of Soul. The Yardbirds. I mean, maybe they should be higher on the charts just for the relevance of that band. Jeff Beck, Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page, all in the same band. Go on to just sweep in the 70s. But the song itself, while being revolutionary to the psychedelic rock sound, thanks to Jeff Beck on the guitar, doesn't blow my mind compared to these other songs. Born to Be Wild, Steppenwolf. In this song, they coined the term heavy metal. I don't know why they aren't put on the list of earliest punk bands like Iggy Pop. Maybe because they were just too psychedelic. But whatever it is, this song is one of the first songs I loved as a kid that was a rock song. You Can't Judge a Book by Its Cover by Bo Diddley. Bo Diddley is one of the first characters of rock and roll, singing mostly about himself in a third person about how great he is. this little guy who claims to have invented Cuban rhythm, essentially. But he at least popularized it in American music in the Bo Diddley beat. The Sound of Silence, Simon and Garfunkel. Maybe that's a little too low on the list. There it is, though. Profound harmonies. Beautiful song. A little pretentious. I think that's why I put it low. It's a little pretentious, isn't it? It's a little pretentious. Let's be honest, Paul Simon's a little pretentious. Happy Together, the Turtles. I mean, Happy Together sums it up. It's just a happy song. And I really love the way that the melody progresses. I love the pre-chorus, the chorus, the verse. It's actually very structurally similar to pop songs today and incredibly catchy. Born Under a Bad Sign, Albert King, what a good riff, right? That's one of the first riffs, like a riff that like really locked you, you know? Papa's Got a Brand New Bag, James Brown. Got to put a James Brown on there, but which one? I also like Get Up Off of That Thing, but that's a long song. Mick Jagger would not exist without James Brown. He would not have been who he was. He would not be a sex icon. He just copied James Brown. My Generation, The Who. Sums up that generation, sums up our generation, every generation. It's the sound of youth. It's no wonder they pioneered punk. The Who were breaking their guitars on stage. That's pretty punk. One Love by Bob Marley. God, that's a hard one to pick, right? In the 70s, I think Bob Marley's number 2 on my list with Redemption Song. Some of those early recordings were re-recorded later, but they're still really good. We got Hush, a song that I used to think was by Deep Purple, but that's a cover. Thus, really making me think Deep Purple was possibly pretty overrated. They're lucky they had Smoke on the Water. Dun, dun, dun. Probably the most sluggish, chonky riff of all time, but hey, does feel kind of badass, doesn't it? We Got to Get Out of This Place. My dad always used to sing that when I was a kid, and so it's got a weird special place for me. I recognize it's not necessarily the best Animals song, but for me, it just makes me laugh every time I hear it. We gotta get out of this place if it's the last thing we ever do. And it's just funny. You can sing that in almost any situation and you're gonna crack up. Constipation Blues. Speaking of funny, Screamin' Jay Hawkins, especially with the name Screamin' Jay Hawkins. Silly. Jackson, Johnny Cash, and June Carter. Boom Boom. A boom, boom, boom. That's just classic blues, Again, a lot of bands wouldn't have existed. I don't even think that Black Sabbath would have existed without riffs like that, Even though they did a little Phrygian mode, they owe a lot to artists like John Lee Hooker, and they're very vocal about that. And hell, they ripped off those artists like crazy. Bad Moon Rising, Creedence Clearwater. They're a almost universally loved band, but people who don't like them really don't like them. That's what I've noticed. Not to mention the lead guy, what a douchebag. The rest of the band is awesome though. I've seen them a couple times. I Want to Be Your Dog, The Stooges. I've got songs that even reference that. I think that's an awesome line. I think that's super fucking edgy for the time. It pioneered punk rock. It pioneered just coming out and saying it and being a little ballsy and getting up on a mic and just saying it and just going out there. Iggy Pop is a character, man. Space Oddity, David Bowie. You got to choose a David Bowie from the 60s, right? He revolutionized music in that time. Hard to choose which one, but I chose Space Oddity. It's not even my favorite song. It's just you got to choose a Bowie song from that era, And that one was pretty unique. Pretty unique, and it kind of captured the time, along with Rocket Man and stuff like that. People were exploring space for the first time, and, it's kind of historical. David Bowie is one of the artists that it's something I really learned to respect, but at first detested. Very dated. Like, he'll talk about whatever's new at that time in his songs, but it makes him kind of a troubadour, telling the voice of the people. Crossroads by Cream. Cream's another powerhouse, right? Not my favorite of the powerhouses. Honestly, I'm not a huge Clapton fan. Some people would probably put Cream at the top of the list. This is kind of Eric Clapton in his prime. I almost said Eric Clapton because that's how I feel about Eric Clapton's really clean, really smooth blues playing. Feel like it's missing the point sometimes. But to each their own. And Crossroads is pretty dang good. I can jam that song. Got My Mojo Working by Muddy Waters. And that's what I'm saying. Muddy Waters, right? Love that song. Yeah, She's Not There by the Zombies. We're getting into the end of the list, right? We're starting to get into some stuff that my dad would sing when I was a kid that's just got some sentimental qualities to it. That's another one that he'd sing. Oh, she's not there. And I just, whenever I hear it, I hear my dad sing it, and it makes me laugh, because he would do it in this theatrical way as a joke, and it would be very funny. Vegetables, the Beach Boys. Now, this is an interesting thought. I wonder if anybody else has ever had this thought. Is Vegetables by the Beach Boys the beginning of what would become Animal Collective? Think about that. You almost can hear it. That kind of thing. It's not for me, but I also respect it. Really unique. And they were experimenting. Parchment Farm, Blue Cheer. This is a band that has a weirdly warm spot for me. Probably Summertime Blues is a better song if you're going to get into that band, but don't get into that band. They're not very good, but they're just really looked over in the history of music as one of the first bands to use distortion alongside and before Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and all those bands. There was Blue Cheer paving the way of experimentation. Not nearly as talented, I don't think, as the people that followed, but they deserve a little recognition. So I just throw them at the end. So go ahead and like and subscribe if you want to see more. I'm going to do every era. This is just my top favorite 50 songs from the 60s. And like I said, I can't put the songs into the video. I wish I could, but since I can't, you can just go to my Spotify, and I've got the playlist there if you want to listen to them. If there's any of these that you're not familiar with, I highly recommend it. They're all good songs. Thanks so much.